My name is Nat Freedland, and I have written a book called The Occult Explosion. On this record album, you're going to hear the statements, in their own voices, of today's most important leaders in the occult and in ESP research. I think you will find that listening to the ideas of these people is going to change and greatly enrich the way in which you look at your world. At its highest levels, the occult is an adventure in mind expansion. Welcome now to the voices of the occult explosion.
Okay, I think a witch has got to be female. I don't believe it's possible for a male personality to occupy himself with this type of activity. And besides being female, a witch has to be psychic. And I think that anyone who says they practice witchcraft and is not highly intuitive and doesn't have extrasensory perception is lying to themselves. Because you have to be able to project your emotions and influence your environment along the same bridge that you would ordinarily be receiving impressions from.
What was the history of witchcraft? Where did it come from?
Well, I think witchcraft has existed ever since the beginning of man. Anytime a mankind attempts to alter his destiny in some way with various methods that may have nothing at all to do with anything obvious, whenever you take an inanimate object and you say, this is going to bring me love, or this is going to bring me courage, or happiness, or wealth, that's witchcraft. And I think man has always needed to do this, and witchcraft has always existed.
What about the religious aspects of witchcraft, or organized covens?
Well, there are organized covens today that I don't really value too much. I think a lot of them are people looking for some kick, wanting to find another way of existing. They may be sincere, but I don't think they have anything to do with religion. Most of them that I've had contact with are not terribly informed about the religious origin of the witchcraft they say they're practicing. And the Druid religion, has gone out of existence quite some time ago.
Where did you get your knowledge of witchcraft?
Well, I come from a group of witches who believe that it's a very personalized action. My grandmother's a witch, and my grandmother's great-grandmother was a witch. I'm 6 generations of witches. And I learned from my grandmother when I was a very young child how to do all sorts of little things that she thought were very potent and important, how to make packets and amulets and cast spells and perform rituals, and use all sorts of methods to read into the future. And she was convinced that the objects were the things that had the magic in them, and I'm convinced that she had the magic in her energy and her emotion and her subconscious, and that's where the thing took place.
Give us sort of an example of a ritual or spell that would be used for a specific end, and how would this work?
Well, there are all sorts of things that you can do. I'm convinced that if you create your own spell, it has a greater effect on your life. But very many people don't have the confidence to do this as beginners. So I think a simple spell is to light the flame of a candle and to sprinkle a circle of salt around the area that holds the candle and you, and then write down on a piece of paper what it is you want to accomplish in very simple statement, maybe a sentence or two, and then burn this in the flame of the candle, all the while concentrating very dynamically upon the effect of the flame. And when you have burned this to an ash, then you know that what you want is about to come your way. The main purpose in the practice of witchcraft is to generate within yourself a very high level of energy that will then carry you successfully through all situations. So the main point is to psych yourself up and reach some kind of an emotional, physical, intellectual high. And this is done through a very rigid, disciplined method of performing a ritual. The people who say they are witches, and there are very many thousands of them in the United States, may or may not be witches. That I don't know. I haven't gone through any special sort of a research or a survey on this. But there are very many thousands more who don't say they're witches, who do practice. There are men who are in very high office who utilize the abilities of witches and who are convinced that these things work. And scattered throughout the world, I couldn't say them, probably are millions. Witchcraft only works so long as the witch is capable of sustaining the energy needed, and I think the witch is at times able to falter. You have to be obsessed with what you're doing. You have to become completely involved in it and almost psychopathic about getting the thing you want. And if you're not able to sustain that high pitch of psychoses and obsession, you don't do it. You can't cast the spell. So it works so long as you work at it. And it doesn't work when you become a little bit normal.
Well, what do you feel then is the value of witchcraft as opposed to just being a psychic?
I think psychics are a very passive lot, and a witch utilizes that same ability to sense and know and feel, but she sends out information rather than merely receives it, and she's able to activate conditions and stimulate the environment into certain directions. I am psychic, but I use it in another way. I don't just receive thoughts. It's too passive a role for me.
Do you think that most people have the ability to become a witch?
No, I don't. I don't think most people can become witches any more than most people can write or dance or sing or paint. I think you're born with the ability. You don't have to be born into a family of witches, but you definitely have to be born with the emotional capacity. And in the same way that everyone can't possibly project the emotion of love on a movie screen, everyone can't perform witchcraft either.